We say go woke, go broke, and there's truth to that, but they just don't care. They really don't care. Look at DC Comics, case in point. Or Warner Brothers, even to go to their big granddaddy there. It's if anybody cared about not making money, they wouldn't do this. They wouldn't keep making the decisions. They don't care. It is 100% more important to them to continue preaching the message than it is to actually make money. Occasionally you might get somebody in there with some talk about, all right, we gotta improve our profit or whatever, no one cares about that person. They can talk a big talk. It's not going to be the way they run the business at all. In terms of the MCU, as I said, we're going to kind of look at this as an example. It's so hard to talk about this because on one hand, I have talked about it on the channel in different moments, in different videos, in different incarnations, but we're gonna kind of funnel it all together here. It's also hard to talk about because, I mean, the MCU just used to be something incredibly special. And I'm not saying that every single movie was the most amazing quality ever. You've got people, especially real Marvel purists, from long ago, like, this movie stunk, blah, blah, blah. But it really is the very, very few people actually will speak out against the MCU in general if they're not just trying to like pit it against DC and they're more of a DC fan or something like that. I mean, the cool things that the MCU did, and we used to think this was Kevin Feige, and maybe it was. If it was, he's completely turned the corner and doesn't care about any of this anymore. But it really was an entity that cared about storytelling. They cared about honoring these characters and their archetypal rooting, their archetypal situation. So somebody like Iron Man, they're going to make an Iron Man movie. Okay. Well, Iron Man's a character that was born out of Vietnam era, basically, in the disenchantment that people felt with the government and so forth. And Stan Lee has talked about, let's create a character that's basically the cultural bad guy, right? The bad guy, the millionaire, the corporatist, the weapons designer and all that kind of stuff. And that was very much something that spoke to the Vietnam era, but then let's give him a conscience and let's, do this kind of stuff to him. And he survived in the comics to the point where he could be remade in different time periods. So you think about, Kevin Feige, Jon Favreau trying to make that first Iron Man film. What do you do with that? How do you synthesize all of that history? And they did it so well because what they privileged was what is his most archetypal relevance and draw to our culture. And there is that draw in every culture. You don't have to be in specifically the Vietnam era to have that sort of distrust of the military industrial complex, at times. And so him as a weapons designer and so forth, it just worked. And then the specifics of the personality, the personal character, the drawing to us, somebody who's trying to work for redemption, somebody who's trying to do the right thing and they're accepting their flaws. I mean, it was just perfect. It was great. And they didn't just take that one approach and use it for every character. I mean, I forget exactly which movie was made the very next one. I think it might be the Hulk. But Captain America, the first Avenger, you can't get a wider gulf in archetypes between somebody very cathartic, motivational like Iron Man and somebody incredibly aspirational like Steve Rogers, Captain America. And they did that, and they treated him, they got the right directors on it and so forth, and they treated him with all due respect. You think about the Thor film, all the way up into like Ant-Man, all the new characters they had there, and the difference in sort of subgenres of the movies, the difference in sub-archetypes and so forth. But the one thing that they kept true to each and every one of these stories was the hero's journey. Each of these characters took the hero's journey. They had that basic arc. They had their own variations on it. And it wasn't like they were just copying each other in any way. But that hero's journey isn't an invention of the patriarchy. It's not a way to keep people down and for one group of people to hold sway over another. No, that's stupid. The idea of the hero's journey is so predominant, it's so intrinsic, it's so seminal to the human experience because it is a reflection on the human experience. I've talked about this before. We get up in the morning, and no matter what our day holds for us, it's the unknown. We get out of that safe space of our bed and we have to enter into the unknown. We don't know what challenges are going to face us. That's a daily example, you know, and then we get through them. And at the end of the day, we have to reflect back on what we've been through or whatever, see how it's changed us. That's a day-to-day example, but certainly major things we go through, you know, traveling, a move, a life change of any sort, you know, job changes, you know, tragedies that befall you or whatever. These are the unknown. These are the caves of the unknown, you know, the treasure we seek is within that cave we are to enter. That's the hero's journey. This is our life experience. It's just basic human experience. And to try to subvert that and say, we don't want to do that anymore. They think in their delusion, oh, we're getting away from this nonsense of the patriarchal hold on the hero. No, they're not. They're not humaning anymore. They're not telling stories that appeal to humans anymore. And the biggest example of that was Captain Marvel. The greatest example of that was Captain Marvel. That movie is such a joke. Listen to people sometime. Go out, you know, do a YouTube search and try and find somebody who's trying to make a case for that film or trying to support that film in some way. Nothing you can say about that movie doesn't ring hollow. There was no journey. She didn't have to discover things or improve upon or work, do any self-work whatsoever. No self-work whatsoever. As I've said, the only thing she had to discover was how amazing she already was without having to lift a finger, and how the patriarchal system kept her down. That's the only thing she had to discover. How amazing she already was. Always was that too. You know, the stupid flashback about, oh, all these times in her life, and they said girls can't do that, but she stood up because she's strong. And that's not a story. That's an agenda. That's a propaganda ad. That's all that is. It's a 2-hour propaganda ad. That's not a story. There's nothing to latch onto. People don't love her character. They don't love her movie. They don't love her story anymore. And they never did, but they don't love that it's not going to be something that sticks with people and sticks around as one of the classics, because it doesn't resonate with the human experience. That's not how the human experience works. Ed Starr says, let me put it up on the screen. Ed Starr says, storytelling, especially the hero's journey, predates the invention of writing. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It predates back to people telling stories around a campfire. You know, it's as old as humanity is. You know, the first caveman coming out of his cave and you know, experiencing or facing a saber-toothed tiger or whatever. That's a hero's journey. You know, in fact, you can go and look. I'm glad you pointed out predating invention of writing, because you can go look at cave paintings. I talk about this in some of my lectures, how comic books, the medium of comic books in particular, it's a visual heroic story medium. And we can trace it right back. I trace it back to like friezes and whatnot on the Parthenon, you know, sculpture, but ultimately back to cave paintings, you know, primitive man cave paintings. It was a way of telling story theatrically, because you think about the caves, you can see a bright, well-lit image of it today on the internet. But if you put yourself back in those days, they typically would have probably had some sort of mind-inducing drug or inhaling some fumes or whatever there in the cave, even if it was nothing more than just the smoke, you know, in the cave, would have had a little mind-altering something. Plus, you're seeing those images depicting a hunt or something like that by torchlight. And it's an uneven surface that they're depicted on, and you've got the jumping fire of the flame, and it almost looks like a sense of movement. You know, it almost looks like this, you know, it was TV before TV, you know. And yeah, storytelling has been around ever since. You can't have a human being without storytelling. I say that all the time. Consume stories responsibly, because stories are what shape us. Stories are what build our society. The stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we believe, and the stories that we spend time around. You know, surround ourselves with on a daily basis. These are our story shaping, our society and mind shaping stories. So yeah, it predates all of that. It's basic humanity. And when they try to change that, you get something like Captain Marvel. And I said, all of the defenses just ring so hollow. They'll try to say, no, the hero's journey is there. Some people have tried to say that, which is just a joke. They can't push that in any way.